target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, good Saturday afternoon. If you don't know who I am by now, where have you been since April 25th of 2020? And that is apropos to the conversation I'm going to be having today because that's the first time I ever met my guest. And it was out in front of the, shall we say, the people's mansion, where whoever happens to be the ordained and anointed candidate of the time to win the governorship in the state of Minnesota was living. And we all know at that time it was, as he's affectionately came to be known as Flannel Mouth Timmy, Tyrant Timmy of the People's State of Marxisota. He happened to be living there at the time, and that was the first time that I ever met my guest that'll be on with me to this afternoon. I almost said tonight because, most of the time I do my stuff in the evening, and I very rarely do live streams during the day on a weekend. So while we're waiting for the audience to build a little bit, we'd apologize for the slight delay because, we are professional. I are in particular professional. And even despite having been doing this now for over 4 years, I still have technical issues that I have to deal with constantly. And I had to reboot my computer, and then my guest had to try three different formats. And now they're sitting in their car. So hopefully battery life is good because she had to use her phone. But rest assured, she does have her tripod set up in her car while she's doing this, so she won't be bouncing around while she's looking for things. But yeah, if this is your first time watching, I would really appreciate it if you'd throw me a subscription. That doesn't cost you a dime. Like the content and don't like the content, whatever you choose to do. I appreciate the feedback. It drives us up in the algorithm, and it keeps things going. And but I think you're gonna like this. Even if you don't like what we have to say, I think you're gonna like how we approach this. And if you are a regular viewer and you haven't done so yet, there's a little join tab over there by the community stuff. I'd love for you guys to pick a level. And as I tell everybody, I'm looking for that one show producer to come in, take that top level of support in the memberships on the channel. And you could become a channel member. We call the channel members Act Localist, which is another reason why my guest today is a great guest, because she is an Act Localist. And she just happens to be one of those people who acts locally in a broad range of places in the state of Minnesota. You could find her locally in a lot of places. But yeah, so become an Act Localist and become that top tier member, and you will get show producer credits. I know that makes you really excited, doesn't it? To take credit for producing TC's show. But as I tell everybody, when I started this, I had no idea it was going to go anywhere. And now that it's gone somewhere, it's cost me a ton personally and career-wise. So anything that you can do to support, whether it be a super chat or super thank you or super sticker or joining the channel as a member, becoming an Act Localist, it all helps. So without any further ado, let's see here. Hola, Becky.
Hey, JC.
It's been a while. The last time we did anything together, we did a deep dive on our good friend Hutch from
Yeah,
Hemping.
some more investigative reporting here.
Yeah, gosh, what has that been? Almost 2 years. It's been 2 years since we did our show on 2 years since we did our show on Hutch, because he got himself into a little bit of trouble and then sent his boys in blue from what city was it that he sent after? Was it Rebecca Bannon?
Yeah. Yep. Great,
And
great reporter.
Yeah. Oh, phenomenally brave.
Amazing.
And they really went after her like nobody's business and harassed her family and whatnot. And
Well, she got the pictures,
yeah, she got them before they got the system shut down. And that,
Yeah.
and I wanted to lead with that because as I told everybody, the first time we ever met was out in front of the governor's mansion. April 25th was the first time I ever saw you, and
Good job.
and it just kind of, huh?
Good job remembering that date. It's all kind of a blur to me.
Well, it sticks in my mind because it was the very first time it was the day I launched the channel, and and I was just walking around interviewing people, and you just happened to be one of the voices there. Because at the time you became known as Bullhorn Becky, and
Good old Bullhorn.
and we've been at a ton of events together, and we agree on, I'd say, probably 85 to 90% of things. I actually I have a different view about accountability when it comes to law enforcement as a lot of people, but I also know you have no problem holding law enforcement accountable when they're wrong. And that's kind of at the root of why we did Hutch and did our deep dive on Hutch, and the work that you did on diving into that story on Hutch, and the story that we're going to be covering today is Royce White. And the reality on Royce is that he's become a darling of the disenfranchised, disenchanted Republican right, conservative base, allegedly. Yet nothing that he stood for in the past at all aligns with anything that base, according to everything that you've been able to find and what I've been able to find. And we've been approaching our research from different perspective. You've been approaching it from these really deep dives back into the history of who he was. And I have done some of that, but not nearly what you've done. And my approach has been to listen to literally hours. Please, folks, when people tell me, well, you should listen to him. Yeah, which is really all I do on my show too.
Thank you for taking one for the team here and listening to hours and hours of him, because I can't do it. It's just, I feel like I'm being gaslit, honestly, and I can't sit and listen to him for extended periods.
You nailed it too, though, sister, because what you hear away from his show from people, and even sometimes from him, is completely different than what you hear from him on his show. And that doesn't mean like he's saying conservative things at public events and then going and saying leftist things on his show. It's just the way he talks to people and what he says about himself and what people say about him at public events is vastly different than how he talks often about his own supporters.
Right. He's actually the worst to his potential constituents. He thinks we're all stupid. He talks to us all like we're stupid.
Calls you racist.
Calls me racist. And the thing about that I've noticed about
not just
him,
you, just people who ask even questions.
Anybody. So, and I've gathered this from not only my own personal experience with him, but talking to friends who have tried to approach the subject with him, and looking at his X, formerly Twitter account, and seeing it for myself on there too. Anybody who tries to question his narrative, they instantly get called a communist, a Marxist, an idiot, moron, leftist. So when he's automatically putting people in that category, conservatives just assume that he's right, that this is a communist, that I'm a leftist. I mean, he had the people at Mille Lacs County Republicans sold on the fact that I was a leftist and I was there to spread gossip.
Well, yeah. So let's lead with that. In that you went to Mille Lacs to the county Republican candidate forum that was basically just,
It was a town hall, where you go and ask questions to candidates.
And you had been invited in particular. It was an open invite that's been given to me by Carol Hexum. I'm just throwing a name out there. Go and meet. Just go and meet him. If you meet him in person, he'll let you ask any of these questions. It doesn't matter who you are. You can ask these questions. He's a really nice guy in person. And so you took her up on that invite.
Yep.
And the one time he's been close to me, I I had other things going on and I couldn't do it, and it wasn't worth the trip for me. But so you did this just, what was it, like a week ago now?
It was last Monday, and I drove an
So
hour and a half to get there. My daughter wouldn't let me sit this one out. So yeah, we went there, and for a town hall where the point is for people to be able to talk to the candidate and ask questions, Royce spent the whole first hour and a half just talking about everything under the sun, super inappropriate stuff at times, lecturing people on where they were during the George Floyd riots and why weren't they down in Minneapolis. He was down there because he's a big leader. But he's like,
yeah,
and it
you
was
live there, bro. So
what?
well, you live there, bro. So
Right. And you brought 80,000 people in to do the protest. But and he brags about all these people that he led there. So, he's basically just gaslighting everybody for an hour and a half. And it's interesting because he was warned that I was there. I think someone recognized me in the group. A friend of mine heard him talk.
you are recognizable. You are memorable, Becky.
Apparently, and I'd been really blasting him on Facebook prior to that, so I was kind of expecting that. But they warned him about me during our little quick break before the Q&A. So this was like 8:30 at night. He just talked for so long, and by the time we got to questions, one person asked a question, and then he called on me right away, which I was kind of surprised. But then I realized why pretty quickly, because he genuinely thought that he could just call on me and get it out of the way. In the video, he says, skip to the punchline, skip to the punchline, like I was there to tell a joke or something. And he interrupted me. And honestly, it was the most ridiculous interaction I've ever had with a candidate.
And you've had some ridiculous interactions with candidates.
I've had some ridiculous interactions. And, sometimes people say that I'm a little too harsh and that, I'm not a polished politician, and I'm not a politician, nor am I very polished. But even he just blows my mind. It just blows my mind that people.
I would have to say, honestly, I watched the entire interaction, and that's been one of the critiques is, oh, well, you edited the video. Like, you didn't.
Well, let me just say,
you put up the totality of what you got.
That wasn't the entire interaction. It was a 13-minute interaction. 13 minutes. And like my friends didn't go into that with 13 minutes worth of memory to record Royce White interrupting me constantly. I mean, he's just going off on tangents, and I'm trying to bring him back. And it's his block and redirect tactic. And then at the end of it, they were all mad at me for wasting their time.
Yeah, and that's what I want people to understand. The video that you did put up is not in any way, shape, or form, and I take you at your word, edited to make it look worse than it actually is.
It actually was worse than that in real life. Like, Royce is lucky we didn't have the full 13 minutes. I wish we did. But it's parts of it, not the whole thing, but none of it is edited in the slightest. But like I said, there were other people recording there. It's interesting that nobody else has posted this video.
And that is apropos to other issues. And, there's an individual out there who, I know that Michael Broadcorp is not one that we would normally lean on for.
I don't even like him.
Yeah. Michael Broadcorp is, he's not one that we would lean on for sound, unbiased commentary on paleo-conservative, paleo-libertarian, or libertarian issues, because Broadcorp is clearly biased to the left.
Yeah.
However, he did cover a story, and I'm not spoiling anything because the name is out there, about a phone call that took place between a Royce White campaigner or staffer and Sean Holster. And
the chair of the Minneapolis Republican Party.
Yes. And the accusation is that from White to Sean is that Sean called and verbally berated, insulted, swore at, cursed out his staffer. And I had an incredibly long conversation with Sean. I know you spoke with Sean, and that is not how it played out. And we're pretty sure that there's audio of that has not been released.
Well, and Royce tried to pull this, do not talk to my female staff. Don't talk to a woman like that. Excuse me? Royce was so disrespectful to me. He's so disrespectful to any woman that questions his narrative.
Well,
we can get into his court record later, but
he's disrespectful to any person. Any person who dares to challenge. And we saw that play out in his debate with Joe Frazier, his opponent, who, by the way, neither one of us is a big fan of either.
I don't know who I'm going to vote for, to be honest. It's really, we didn't get many good options this time around. But you know what? If Royce White keeps, his main attack on Joe Frazier is that Joe Frazier uses he, him pronouns, which, look, I hate that too. Yeah, I would never put it on my own work signature. I don't know what's going on at Wells Fargo. Maybe they have to do it. I really don't know. I really don't care. That is nothing in comparison to who Royce White is today and who he was back in 2020. Like, I'll take pronouns all day, I guess, if that's my choices.
If that's what you're left with. Yeah. But so what we have is this track record of shall we say, bullying. I mean, it's just bullying of literally called Sean a pencil-necked geek and told him, you come say that to my face and basically see what happens.
Yeah, he likes, and that's, I can think of another person who talked to him within the last week, and he threatened to fight him too. He's a hothead. And he threatens assault. Like, he does it on X too. He says, shut up, I'll slap you or something. It's like, and he actually has that on his record. So I don't know if he should be saying that.
Well, I mean, or not paraphrase it, or at least, like say, I will verbally or philosophically or rhetorically slap you down or something. Yeah. But no, it's
literally come fight me. If you want to question my narrative, let's box it out. What? Is he going to fight people on the floor of Congress? Is that his plan, to run his mouth and fight people?
Honestly, I think it would be more fun if Congress did fight more often. I think it would actually be more interesting. If we could get it to look more like Jakarta in Congress, the better off we'd all be. Hey, Jugs, one of my moderators is here. Thanks, Jugs. I appreciate you stopping in. This is not normal fare for Jugs. Jugs is normally in when I'm doing accountability. Well, this is accountability stuff. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, back to your situation with Royce in person. He drugged this entire, you wanted one question, and I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember. Did you ever actually get to ask the question? No.
So I came prepared. I did my homework. I had it all typed up, and it kind of looked like a lot, but honestly, if I wouldn't have been interrupted, I read stuff all the time, and I'm a pretty good public speaker, and I could have just rolled right through it. And, there were 2 questions at the end. One of my questions was, which I did mention this, and there's one of the clips shows this, but I said, you called me an idiot, stupid, moron, all these names, and other people on social media. Do you stand by that? Well, apparently he does, because he said he stands by it. He actually made me repeat what he said, and then goes, I stand by that. And then the next question that I didn't get to ask was, do you feel any remorse for the damage that was caused in Minneapolis due to all the people he brought in? And I never got to ask that. And I never got to, well, they called the cops on me when I started talking about his campaign manager, so that's how that went.
That's where I wanted you to get to, and we'll hold off on his campaign manager for just a second, because I believe, going through the research that you've done and in our conversations leading up to this, Royce is the problem.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, Royce is our candidate.
Royce is the candidate that GOP voters are going to have to choose between between Royce and Joe Frazier, and there's like 14 other no names on there that don't have a chance between those two.
Right.
So it's going to be Royce or Frazier. We just got to be honest. It's going to be one of those two.
Yep.
So Royce is a problem in that he's going to be the titular head if he wins the primary.
Yep.
But behind Royce is a deeper issue, and that is his campaign manager. And I want to go there next. But first, I want to talk about the reality that you were at a campaign town hall to talk to a candidate that's supposed to be there to be publicly engaging with his potential constituents.
Yeah.
We're not talking about you traveling to a district outside of a district that Royce White would be representing, like we have seen in some situations, which I still don't have a problem with. If you're going to be working as an independent investigative journalist, you should be able to go to any meeting in any district. And that's basically
It was a Republican town hall, and I'm a Republican.
Absolutely. And he will be representing the entire state of Minnesota. So it doesn't matter where you go to talk to him.
Yep. Well, he doesn't come to my district. So he doesn't come to the Twin Cities too much.
Very selective about where he goes.
Very selective.
And he goes where he knows he goes where he can be assured that there will be no interference.
Yeah. He goes where he thinks people are stupid. Let's be real about it. Well, he goes where he thinks people don't know who he is. He can't go to Minneapolis. They know who he is in Minneapolis. And the Republican Party of Minneapolis doesn't want him there.
And they won't host events for him.
They won't host events for him because they know about him. Now, what does that tell you? Minneapolis, we need to win CD5. And CD5 is saying, oh, heck no. We don't. But Royce is still running around talking about, I'm in Minneapolis. You didn't go to Minneapolis. Why weren't you down in Minneapolis? Well, he talks like he goes to Minneapolis, but he doesn't. He goes out to crimson red districts. And
in CD5,
and not CD5. He goes to,
you're saying Otter Tail County,
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Why, if he's such a leader, if he's such a big, you're talking about big tent and we got to let people in and he's supposed to unite us under this fight. So why isn't he in Minneapolis campaigning? That's where we need a Republican campaigning.
Which brings up something else, but I wanted to point, so I'm making a note in my head right now because you know how I do this. I don't have any scripted stuff. They called the cops on you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mille Lacs County Republicans.
Yeah, that people have to understand. We hear, some of my material that I've done over the last few years, how many times I have been at events where cops have been called on parents at school board meetings, and I've recorded that. I have been at an event in Rochester where the cops were called on Republicans by DFL and University of Minnesota president in Rochester. They tried to run us off. They put their hands on me. Cops have been called on Republicans and conservatives all over the place. And we hear this all the time from people. Look, I support the cops, but they're using the cops against us.
Right. Well,
what happens to you in Mille Lacs? They call the cops on you.
For asking, I didn't even get to ask my question. They called the cops on me, continuing to question Royce's narrative. I'm not a crazy, aggressive lady. I might be a little sassy.
Not crazy, Becca.
I might be a little sassy, and you might not want to hear what I'm saying, and I might not shut up when you tell me to. In fact, I probably won't. But that's not a reason for a room full of Republicans to call the cops on a fellow Republican asking questions at a town hall.
And that
and
to their credit, and this is where when I asked you about this, I very blatantly said, and what happened, and we're not going to run you off. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like,
no, this, yeah.
so props to the cops. Was it city cops or was it county?
Whew, we had a city and county response. Like, I think they thought I was, because they didn't, he was like, I don't really know why we were called. Because when they got there, I was standing out in front having a conversation with a woman. He's like really confused. He probably thought it was Antifa or something. And so they sent 4 squads. And he's like, look, it's a public park. I'm not going to kick you out. He goes, you might want to leave, though. As if the mob is going to come out and get me afterwards, of all the elderly people.
You might have needed protection from all the people with canes and walkers. Yeah. That was horrible. I'm sorry. Emily says the videos are not edited. My recording clipped for time. We were there with the bullhorn. Yeah. I mean, that's, and I'm saying that in defense of you guys, just so you know, Emily, I'm not accusing you guys of editing anything.
People on Facebook they've said, well, not necessarily editing, but they say post the whole thing. Where's your videos of Royce? Like, look, Royce doesn't stop talking. I don't know who has that much time on their phone. Like, I got sometimes I have to delete apps to take pictures on my phone. I don't have that much memory. And
you're not buying a new phone every time you go to an event.
What?
You're not buying a new phone every time you go to an event.
Right. And I guess maybe in the future I'll figure, do audio recording or something. But yeah, none of us expected him to just ramble on and on and on for 13 minutes straight.
I could have warned you.
I can't even remember all the stupid stuff he said, to be honest.
So you brought up this fact that he does tend to go to these very extremely red, I don't mean extremists, but just these extremely red forums and districts and areas. But yet the argument that we keep getting, and I think you will know this from your interactions, is that we need Royce because he can get the inner city, right? Yeah. We keep hearing that. And my throwback to that on a philosophical and intangible level is, then why didn't he win in District 5 when he ran against Cece for the nomination? And Cece won the nomination in the primary handily. And
Do you remember how he treated her afterwards, too?
Oh my gosh.
And he didn't even vote in that election. P.S. Voting records show that he didn't even vote in his own election.
He couldn't even vote for himself.
He didn't even vote for himself. What?
That's kind of why I wore my shirt today. I just hope both candidates have fun. I'm at that place in my life.
He's having fun, all right, with campaign donations. I can tell you that.
But then we ultimately he made some very severe threats about retribution against Minneapolis Republicans, and hops on his plane to go to a strip club. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. No, it's neither here nor there.
He was hungry.
Yes, in Florida. But then we ultimately knew what was going to happen. We had hopes that whoever won the primary there would maybe unseat Ilhan. It's kind of how we feel about Amy Klobuchar. We know how hard it's going to be to unseat her, just kind of like with Ilhan.
Yeah.
But the argument that we're getting is that the only way that that Joe Frazier, no one else can get that district. It can't be Joe. It can't be, people have. I make no bones about who I'm supporting in the Senate election and Senate race. But Royce is the only one who can win Minnesota, and he can do it because he's going to bring in CD5, that district in Minneapolis. He's the only one that can do that. But yet he's spending no time. So either he's overly confident that he's going to get that, I hate to say it, but that North Minneapolis, that inner city vote that we keep hearing people beg. Brian Warfield is a really good example of a conservative black man who's telling us to come into the inner city, and he can't get anybody to come. And he can't even get Royce in there?
Oh yeah, well, he claps back at Royce all the time about it too. I mean, Royce will rep the hood all day long, and he brags about all this, the people he brought together in Minneapolis in 2020, and the way he talks, he sounds like he's going to Minneapolis, and if you didn't know any better, you probably would think he did.
But he must be on the streets every day. Is how
in between podcasts, yeah. I mean, he's got to be, yeah. I don't know when he takes care of his kids. Oh, that's right.
Oh,
we went there.
Yeah.
But so I also actually just recently learned that CD5, because also we hear, well, the delegates picked him. So, the delegates stood against the establishment and they picked Royce. So we all need to fall in line with the delegates, like 63% or something. Well, come to find out, CD5 had the lowest number of delegates vote for Royce White. So we're seeing too, like, it's contradicting itself here. So Royce is saying one thing, his supporters are saying the same thing, but in reality, it's not like that at all. And people that are from CD5 don't like him, don't want him there. They know all about him. He'd get run out. Like, he would get run out of Minneapolis.
Which is ultimately kind of what happened in his primary race with Cece. That people overwhelmingly pick Cece because she appealed to people in a way.
Well, she's a classy lady. You can stand up to the establishment and the globalist elites and deep state. You can do all that with a smile on your face and not resort to degrading insults and to just your standard person. Like, I know I can get a little, sassy with some like literal demons walking on the street, but that's not your average constituent. That's someone that really sucks, but Cece can answer questions. She can do it with a smile on her face. She can still be a fighter. Royce can't do that.
And that's demonstrated in your video. And just so people are aware, because of some technical issues, and we're not making this up. We both had technical issues today. My computer didn't want to work. It said it's Saturday. I want the day off. We will be uploading images and the video that they have from the Mille Lacs Republican Party event will be getting uploaded both to my Facebook in a post with this video link, as well as I will be downloading and then re-uploading the actual event video to my YouTube channel so that people can have it, so that it's out there, so people can just share it rather easily. So if you're not on Facebook and you're watching this, you will be able to see what we're talking about.
And the nice thing is that video does show the beginning when I stood up to ask the question, and you can see that I'm interrupted. I get like not even 3 sentences. I get like 3 words out, and you're lucky interrupted.
If you got that.
Oh, I know. It was so ridiculous. And then it shows the very end, 13 minutes later, 10 minutes later, something like that. So you'll just have to fill in the gaps yourself, but but it shows the beginning and it shows the end, and it's ridiculous. And I mean, I have a folder here.
I can tell you're looking at it. You got your notes open.
Yeah, I mean, I've got receipts for days. The problem is people don't want to read them. The people that do are like, oh my gosh, this guy is a loser.
How many people, since you put that video up, have now said, what the hell is going on?
He's lost countless voters. And those are just the ones that comment. Those videos have been watched thousands of times. The post has been shared probably 40 times by now. And I'm honestly dumbfounded by the people that can watch that or not watch it and still support him. Like, either you didn't watch the video and didn't look at all the documentation that I have, or you're just ignorance is bliss and this is your guy and it doesn't matter, which is what the left does, that we complain about all the time. How could you vote for Joe Biden? He showers with his granddaughter.
His
Hunter,
daughter.
his daughter, yeah, all of them probably. And we're like, didn't you do your homework? Do you not? These people are just refusing to look at what he's done. It's wild.
Here's something, and this is a compliment to you, and I'm not gonna. You've known me a while now, and some of my viewers know I'm pretty self-effacing. I can't handle positive comments about myself, and it's weird. But one of the things that really bothers me about how, and you and I have beefed on a couple of things. I'm not gonna, that's not meant to put anything out there. Other, I just want people to know that, like, Becky and I don't have this love relationship where it's like, you're the best thing in the world. You've never said anything stupid. We never disagreed on
I haven't
anything.
talked to you in like 2 years, so.
Right. Well, right, but it's not. But I don't want people to see it that way. Like somehow we're like off screen, hanging out and having beers together all the time, and having these self-congratulatory conversations where you're just the best thing that's ever happened to the world. That's not it.
Well, I've been told it's my loyal followers. The people that don't like Royce, those are my loyal followers. Like, as if I've just got this fan club following me around all the time.
That's why I wanted to bring that up, is because we haven't talked in 2 years.
Right.
We haven't talked in 2 years, and I'm glad we did reconnect, because I realized how much I've missed our ability to interact and bounce ideas off of each other. But what pisses me off in all of this is, for 2.5, almost 3 years, people were coming up to people like you and coming up to people like me going, we're so thankful for voices like yours. We're so thankful that you're out there saying these things and doing these things. We're so thankful that you're willing to show up at protests. We're so thankful that you would stand in front of the governor's mansion, TC. We're so thankful that Becky, that you would be out there and saying these things and organizing this stuff. You're so smart. You're so strong. We're so motivated. We're so encouraged by you. But now you're enemy number one. I'm enemy number two. Thank you for taking the heat off.
Until you question their savior, because we're all looking for a hero right now in the Republican Party, and some people have latched onto him. Like I said, I got called a leftist. Like, that's laughable. I mean, I laughed, and he had the whole room cheering. Like, he called me an idiot and a moron in this room. They're just clapping him on, and I'm like, who are you guys? Are you serious? And I don't want to pull the, like, do you know who I am sort of thing, but, like, let's get real here. First of all,
at some point you have to.
Well, right, but it's like, people who know me know that, like, I'm not just gonna go to a town hall and confront a candidate unless I have my facts straight. And I'm not just going to go there on some gossip that I heard through the grapevine that, oh, we heard Royce might have done this. No, like, I did my homework and I was well informed, and I was doing exactly what you're supposed to do at a town hall. If you are an educated voter and you give a damn about saving this country, you do your homework and you go and you ask the candidates these things. And so for them to cheer on his disrespect and B, call the cops on me, they should all be ashamed of themselves. And I know not everybody there participated in it, but that's how he gets people. That's how he silences people, because you know what? Not everybody's as brave as me. In fact, a lot of people aren't. And most people aren't going to go and stand up to big old Royce White. Like, he's an intimidating character, and not a lot of people are going to do that. And they're really not going to do it if their fellow conservatives are calling the cops on them and, basically just mocking me and belittling me. People aren't going to say anything. And that's exactly why he does it.
Yes.
He does it because he doesn't make it easy. He doesn't make people want, now everyone's like, whoa, I'm not going to go ask him. He's going to call me an idiot in front of my kid.
I've invited him on to come on. I've sent at least 2, but I can definitely screen grab the one email and never heard back.
He loves being on podcasts, though. That's so weird.
Well, no, he loves being on shows where he either can run over everybody or be praised as a hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And And when I've said, hey, if you've got connections to Royce, tell him to reach out to me. I would love to have him on. It's not going to be a cakewalk for him. And then I get told, well, we're not here to promote you and your show. I've literally had, those are the responses. And yet he'll sit down with Pac-Man and make an ass out of himself. And like it,
Yeah.
to get me to defend a leftist, like, it
Isn't
doesn't
it
make
wild?
me, it's
so
like, I don't
weird,
even
the
like,
people I find myself agreeing with right now.
I'm like, I don't even like Pac-Man. I'm like, the guy is clearly a hardcore leftist, and I don't like it. But like, for Pac-Man to come out on top of that and look like the better man, I'm like, what the hell happened?
Like, this is bad.
It's a very bad. Yeah. So we've kind of established your creds and that what you went through that night. And once again, folks, the video will be up after this show, sometime this weekend. I am but one man, and I have my crew is all here with me right now.
Me and my loyal followers are here too.
Yeah, mine as well. And that is not to downplay my viewers, folks. Please, I want you to understand I'm not picking on you guys. I love the viewers, even the hate watchers, the FBI, the BCA, all that. The one thing that's really stood out to me is your work behind the scenes on digging into his campaign manager. And there's some concerning. I don't want to spoil it because I know you'll drop the bomb in the right way. More concerning than Royce is who his campaign manager is and where he tends to show up and where he tends to be and where he's come from. Because his claim to fame is that he got a hold of Royce and turned him conservative.
Yeah.
So tell us about his campaign. Name him, and then let's start talking about where we found him.
Well, so his name is Jonathan Mason. And I want to start this by saying I didn't even, I've seen Royce White as a candidate, whatever. I really wasn't paying much attention to him. Something I always felt off about him, and that's probably why I never jumped on the bandwagon. But it wasn't until Officer Mitchell was killed in Minneapolis police officer. And I'm watching the 9 o'clock Fox 9 News, and they're interviewing this man named Jonathan Mason in front of a memorial that he started for Officer Mitchell. And I'm staring at the screen and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure that's the anti-police protester that's like all over every cop situation ever. Everything. And so I looked it up and I'm like, yep, that's Jonathan Mason. And then I don't even know how I came, but I'm like, wait a minute. He started the 10K Foundation with Royce White, Senate candidate. And so then it was like down this huge rabbit hole of Jonathan Mason and Royce White starting the 10K Foundation, which Royce gets caught up. If you were to ask him, oh, well, you marched with BLM. He'll say, well, no, BLM marched with me. You can't use BLM. In the video from the Malacca town hall, he kept saying, skip to the punchline, I'm with BLM, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, I never said anything about BLM. I said, it's the 10K Foundation. And that's when he started getting, slightly more unhinged because I dialed it in to the 10K Foundation. It's not BLM. In my head, and Royce even says it, anybody can put on a shirt and say they're BLM. Well, anybody can say they're 10K. And Royce, according to Royce himself, I told him he organized 10,000 citizens. Well, and he corrected me. It was 80,000 citizens in 2020 for the George Floyd riots. But they prayed, and it was all peaceful. I guess I don't know where the other people came from, but 80,000 is a pretty big number to be saying it was peaceful given what happened. Anyways, so I'm down the rabbit hole of Jonathan Mason and Royce White starting the 10K Foundation. And then I keep, moving forward in time. They did Dante Wright protests together. There's videos of Royce White talking about breaching the fence because Kim Potter's a murderer, which, by the way, he just repeated last Monday. And the room full of Mille Lacs County Republicans, they clapped that Kim Potter's a murderer, Derek Chauvin's a murderer. He never denied doing any of that in Brooklyn Center. He only justified it by saying they're murderers. So that's about as conservative as it gets, right?
Here's where this is a really good place for me to say this. Like, folks, like, I have a lot of questions about Derek Chauvin. I have a lot of questions about Kim Potter. Everybody who knows me knows that. Like, they know that. And part of me wants to respect Royce on one level and say, at least you're not like trying to like erase that from your history. At least you're saying it. But what floors me, Becky, is that people who in that room in 2020 during the Summer of Love were putting signs in their yards that said all lives matter and white lives matter and blue lives matter.
Yeah.
Who were saying the same thing during Kim Potter are now applauding a man who's telling them that the people they were defending in 2020 and into 2021 and on are murderers. That's what bothers me. Is I know how I feel about these things because I have some questions about police accountability. I don't back down from that. But where's it? Because those are the same kind of people that would turn on me and go, "You're a leftist."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But also, here's another glaring difference. Not only because people are free to have their opinions, okay? And lots of people's opinions have evolved since 2020. Problem is, he was actually there throwing the party. Like, he hosted the riots. He brought people there. He brought in, according to him, 80,000 people. So it's not just words, it's actions.
But okay, Becky, but this is what you're going to hear. Okay, Becky, sure, fine, whatever. Are you implying that he wanted them to go in and do those things? That's what you're saying. That's what you've been.
Will he ever admit it? Right? Probably not, but he's not denying it.
Right, but that's what you've heard, is that people have questioned you. Yeah. Well, you can't.
He's a changed man, too.
Yeah, very changed. It shows.
Totally.
Yeah, he might be wealthier than he was. But
so these people not only are, because maybe they do think Derek Chauvin's a murderer. Okay, people are entitled to that. But to be sitting there clapping for the guy who is responsible for all that destruction, who's on video trying to encourage. Okay, so if he's on video at the Daunte Wright protests, riots, calling for people to breach the fence. Look, I was born at night and it wasn't last night. But I can only
you were such a boomer.
Assume that he might not have been as peaceful as he said he was, standing in front of the 3rd precinct where he was interviewed at.
So for context, and you're not just pulling this. You didn't just find somebody that happened to be a tall guy at the Kim Potter thing. Like, you've his own words.
Yeah, actually, at Malacca at the town hall event, because he kept saying I didn't say that. I'm like, Royce, you're on video. Like, did you have a doppelganger in 2020 or what? Because that's the thing. People, and especially conservatives, we are so trained to not believe the media, and rightfully so. I'm not faulting anybody for that, but we have to use discernment, and you have to be able to read an article from CNN and pull out the facts and pull out the lies, and sometimes it's difficult and sometimes it's really obvious, but I'm sorry, when Royce White is on video saying something, I'm going to take that as Royce White saying something. But everyone just automatically brushes it off as, oh, he was on a CNN interview. Well, but he still said it. I don't care, I don't care if he was on
CNN twisted his words. CNN twisted his words, Becky. Come on.
No, Royce, and you just got to think about who he is now. He doesn't shut up. He's on a million podcasts. He's on puts out 4-hour-long podcasts of himself every single day. He talks your ear off constantly. So do you think he was any different in 2020? No. No, he was a media darling. It's not like they were giving Royce White bad press. He was the hero. One of the news articles says the faces behind the, like civil rights movement in Minneapolis, and it's Royce White, and pictures of him with thousands of people on the 35W bridge. And these are all Royce. Like, this isn't AI. This is him.
And behind him, orchestrating all of this, using his celebrity, I mean, whatever you want to call it, celebrity. I may be a little sarcastic when I say that, but behind him is his campaign, who is now his campaign manager, who just happens to have been at all of these key moments, and that's Mr. Mason, who, when we get back to it, helped him with the 10K, but more importantly, where was he during George Floyd? Literally on that day.
Well, according to media reports, Jonathan Mason was the first person to report George Floyd's death, I believe, to the 4th precinct or 3rd precinct. I don't know which precinct, but he was the first person to go to the police station to report it, which is just strange. He's standing right next to Royce and all their marches. According to Royce himself, they've been friends since they were kids. Jonathan Mason went to school with he knew Dante Wright, coincidentally. When the whole thing with John Thompson happened, and he was accused of domestic assault, and he did a press conference on the steps of the Capitol in St. Paul, and some crazy Trump supporter came and drawing circles on the lawn, waving a Trump flag. Jonathan Mason's there too. When Officer Mitchell was killed in the streets of Minneapolis, there's Jonathan Mason posting a picture of a dead Minneapolis police officer on his Facebook page, Mornings with Mason. Check it out.
Basically, like from the scene, like he was there for the scene of it, like he just happened to be there.
Why? And then he was the first person to make a memorial. He took rose petals and did an outline in the street of where the Officer Mitchell had laid. But yet at the same time, he's protesting Trooper Lundgren every day at the courthouse. He's protesting, Royce White and Jonathan Mason organized the Derek Chauvin trial protests. He's traveling across the country protesting police. Huge defender of Ricky Cobb. How can he be both? And why is he always there? Why is he there when there's these issues, confrontations, murders of police officers?
Whenever something needs to kick off, he sure does seem to be there for some key moments.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't have the answers to that, but it's real sketchy. And actually, in a paragraphs long racist rant that Jonathan Mason went on about me, which we can also post. Yes, these people are very proud of the work they did in 2020. That's why it's amazing that conservatives think this is just hot gossip. No, literally, Royce White and Jonathan Mason brag about their leadership, all the people they brought down to Minneapolis. Jonathan said he needed to get, that I was misrepresenting him or something, and then went on to confirm literally everything that I said about him. He organized no protest. Trooper Lundgren. I'm just a racist, raggedy white chick, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but here, let me confirm everything you just said. So, I mean, when people tell you who you are, you need to listen. And people aren't listening. Like, they just think that this is just, that all of a sudden I decided one day to wake up and go after Royce White because I don't have anything else going on in my life.
Well, you don't, because you're sitting here with me on a Saturday.
I know. But this is important. It's really important, honestly.
Yeah, and and nobody else is. And that's the thing. I was like, I've been waiting for. I cannot explain what you've touched on this, and I've been trying to figure it out too. I cannot, for the life of me, understand or even begin to explain how, even with a news cycle being what it is, like I'm old enough to remember when there was no 24-hour news cycle. It was literally, from 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning to like 10 to maybe 12 o'clock at night. And then it was done. The TV went off because there was nothing going on.
Yeah.
And you'd have to wake up in the morning and find out what the news was because the news was telling you. And
Yeah.
so our attention span has changed to some degree. And I understand that. What I don't understand is the apparent attention span of gnats that people have become, where the media is not even covering Royce White at all anymore. And not just conservative media, because even the conservative media is not really touching him anymore, unless it's, fringe podcasts. And
we could do an hour-long podcast every day for like the next month and still not cover everything about him. And nobody's talking about it. Why?
Even the left-wing Mockingbird media is not.
He's a treasure trove of disaster. I mean, from abuse charges with his children's mom, child support, strip clubs.
Because the claim is he was never actually charged, and there's no conviction on his record. Because he said that to some degree, in some way, shape, or form, he denies the validity of the accusation.
Oh, I'm sure he does. He also didn't show up to court to say that in court either. So I believe it was a harassment restraining order. I believe
an HRO, or a Danko or something. Was it a Danko or what? At this point, it doesn't matter. What matters is
I would maybe take it more with a grain of salt if like Royce was a super nice guy and if it totally contradicted what we've seen of him, but actually it checks out perfectly. And when I left the town hall, I was like, man, this guy he's got a temper, and he gets in fights on the basketball court. He is a fighter, he's threatening any man that I'm surprised he didn't threaten to box me. So it all checks out. So, there are allegations. Again, I wasn't born last night. And,
Well, I could tell people it takes numerous times for a woman to ever get to the point where she's willing to say, yes, this actually happened. Women who are chronically abused, physically especially, just don't talk about it.
And his level of manipulation. And I mean, I feel like all these Republicans that are his followers, like they're in an abusive relationship with him. This guy screams at us, calls us mega extremists constantly, talks badly about fellow conservatives, and people just love him. And they're willing to look past all the bad things he's done. Well, I don't care if he burned down Minneapolis. He's the fighter we need. What?
Here's what I really appreciate about what you said about the mega extremist thing. What we have seen from him is that he uses that moniker for himself. He very much links himself to Donald Trump. He's a Trump guy, has been for a long time.
Oh yeah.
I don't know Trump, if he's
all day.
Yeah. It's not. I don't know if he's ever come out and claimed that he's been endorsed by Trump. I don't know that he's ever made the claim. I've never heard him say it, but he goes definitely
just up until saying he was endorsed. He implies it.
Yeah, he wants everybody to know that he is Team Trump, that he agrees with Trump's positions on stuff, and he says all of these things. He gets right up there. And then he shows up. And so like this Wednesday, he showed up to Farm Fest, which, by the way, if you haven't had a chance to watch his performance at Farm Fest, folks, I will encourage you to do so. Because all of his supporters that were at Farm Fest will tell you that he had Amy Klobuchar so shaken she couldn't stop drinking from her mug whenever he would speak. implying it. And one person even went so far as to say, I watched, and I don't know what she had in that mug, but she definitely had to drink from it every time Royce spoke. In other words, there's an implication there that Amy Klobuchar needed liquor to get through her FarmFest forum with Royce there. And I'm like, I don't like Amy, but I don't like Amy, but Amy Klobuchar is too polished to need to drink to get through a FarmFest forum with Royce there.
She was probably, yeah.
But Royce's introduction, first words out of the gate at FarmFest were, I'm the mega extremist here. And that's why people love it when he calls them mega extremists. Because he puts that label on himself, because it has them convinced that he is Donald Trump in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
that he's Donald Trump from Minnesota.
And the commies are going after him. The leftists are going. He's right over the target. He says the left wing, the leftists and Marxists and so whatever name he can come up with at the time, they're all going after him, and this is why they hate him so much.
And you've dug into that a little bit. Like, you cannot find just this onslaught of attacks on him by the media outside of the first days right after the nominating convention at the state convention. There was a big
and the FEC violations.
And after that's it. Nobody says anything now. Has anybody said a word one in the last few weeks about any of that?
No. But I'm the leftist that's coming after him. You're the leftist that's coming after. We're all the leftists that's coming after him. And
he doesn't even have to say that about all of us who are doubting his creds, because he's got his followers to say it for him now.
Either that or I work for Joe Frazier's campaign. I mean, people just cannot accept that I did my homework. Like, no, I formed these opinions on my own.
Did not somebody accuse you of getting paid by Frazier?
Oh, yeah, several times. Several times. I'm like, look, I don't even know if I'm going to vote for Joe Frazier. None of this has anything to do with Joe Frazier. And Joe Frazier, posts a really great video of compilation of Royce White's greatest hits. And people start going, well, check your source. It's his opponent. Well,
it's his own words.
Royce White saying it.
It's his own words.
Exactly. And no, I'm not chilling for Joe Frazier. I have nothing to do with his campaign. I have not even done any homework. All I know about Joe Frazier is he uses he, him pronouns, and he works for Wells Fargo. That's seriously all I know is all Royce White has repeated a million times about him.
Which is actually one of my favorite things, not about Joe Frazier, but about the attacks on him. There again, the he, him stuff bugs the hell out of me.
Well, it's super annoying, but in comparison.
But to attack a person because they work for a bank like Wells Fargo, I'm like,
okay, so he's got a job.
Okay, sorry. He's got a job.
Yeah.
I have other views with Joe Frazier. I don't like the fact that Joe Frazier is a military-industrial complex shill. He'll do whatever they tell him to do, whether it's fund Ukraine or fund Israel or whatever. He'll do it.
Right.
He just war. He wants more
we
war.
got the shaft on candidates. This sucks. And honestly, if Royce White is on the ballot, I'm either not going to vote in that race, or I'd rather vote for Amy Klobuchar. And my reasoning, and I've never voted for a Democrat in my life. I still might not. But my reasoning behind that is stick with the devil, And you know what? Amy Klobuchar sucks. And actually, I probably won't vote for her. I probably just wouldn't vote. But she can embarrass her own party. That's fine. She's not representing me. Democrats they embarrass themselves all the time. We're used to their antics. We know what they're about. Royce White is very different. And I don't think people are seeing his rhetoric and his, fight. When Trump says fight, we're all like, yay. But Trump isn't literally threatening to fight people. And Trump isn't, throwing riots and cities are burning down and breaching the police stage. So, it'd be different if Royce had this fighter's spirit without the history. But his history proves it worries me. It worries me because if this is the face of the Republican Party, first of all, he's gonna screw it up for the whole ticket.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, strategically speaking, he doesn't have a chance of beating Amy.
No,
He just,
and
he
especially
just
with the
doesn't.
moderates and like
And
the
I don't really
Democrats
think
that might be
Fraser does.
sick of. He doesn't appeal to many people, to be honest, once you really get going. And it's just going to what he's doing. And the media loves to call us mega extremists too. I've never called myself a mega extremist except for like just kind of like joking casually, like, oh, mega. But like, no, he does it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And he's setting this tone. And this is the same thing he did with the left in 2020. He got everybody worked up and uses this, we need to fight. We're, like you said, disenfranchised. We got to fight the system. It is all the same tactic rebranded for Republicans.
It's
Because
right
when you
out
dig
of
into it, it's not genuine.
It's all right out of Alinsky's rules for radicals. When you look at it, you're adopting the language of your opponent, and then you're using that language against them. And when we were talking about, hey, should we get together and should we do a show? Like, what's it going to look like? One of the things that we both kind of had the same, I don't want to say it's a conclusion because we can't reach a conclusion because we don't have anything. But the feeling that I was left with, and I know you were left with, is it feels controlled. It feels
very,
very controlled, like it's controlled opposition. And like he's very specifically here to cause a problem. And that's it.
Yeah.
And
that's what worries me, is that people are gonna, because let's face it, we are all fed up. We're tired of these, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because it's like, I want a fighter too. And I want somebody who stands up in Congress and gets things done and fights for Americans. But it ain't Royce. Like, I don't want this type of fight. This is the type of fight that's going to make us all look bad and probably lead us straight to jail. Because you know what? In 2020, they didn't face any consequences. But in 2024, if Royce White leads conservatives down this fight, people are coming, blah, 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 mega extremists.
Thank you. The people are coming.
You're going to go to jail.
And that's what all of his signs are. We the people are coming. And when you look at, without putting the video at risk for getting taken down, when you look at a particular date in January of a particular year on a very particular day, and then you dive into the very particular aspects of that day, and there are more and more videos out there now showing that things aren't what they seemed.
Yeah.
A lot of people were misled that day by people who were there as plants.
Yep. Wolf in sheep's clothing.
I could think very specifically about one who we all love to hate, named A.Epps. And I think we all know who I'm referring to. And that's the feel that this has. It very much has a Epps feel to it, very much to me. And I've been saying this for a while. And the militant language. Look, I'm all for militant language on a philosophical level.
Yeah, me too. Like, you look at someone like President Trump. Trump has that same fighting, and this is why I think Royce latches to him too and tries to look like he's Trump. Trump very much has that fighter spirit without the militant language, without the, that when Trump is telling us to fight, he means like legally fight. Like, he means fight the good fight. Right. Not go burn down cities, not go do, and another thing that I want to make sure to touch on is at the town hall, and I've heard this from actually several people that Royce has talked to, when you start questioning him about 2020 and, his past life, he's very quick to scold you. Where were you? Well, I was down in Minneapolis leading 80,000 people. Where were you? And he did that to me numerous times when I was trying to ask him his question.
He clearly didn't know
tore
who
my
he was talking to.
well, and I told him, I said, Royce, I was at home. I'm a mom. And I'm not going to go down to Minneapolis when there's chaos and riots and police are completely swamped and risk my life and go join the chaos. And he was literally sitting there in a room full of elderly people, screaming at them, where were you? Where were you? You were all sitting at home. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Nobody should have been down there.
And he's chastising elderly people for not being part of the riots.
Exactly.
And even the peaceful protests.
And a mom. I'm like, look, Royce, I'm a mom. He said, well, where was your husband? Like everybody's supposed to be down there doing what? Why were we supposed to be down? He never says why we were supposed to be down there, but he's so quick to, blame people and make them feel bad. And it's real weird because I don't know. I just never heard this line of questioning from a Republican to Republicans. Why weren't you down there causing more problems for police? Why weren't you down there endangering your life? Like, I don't know why he wants us all to be down there, but all I can think is because when something like that happens again, it makes people instantly say, well, I wasn't down there last time. I'm going to be down there this time. It's like he's setting the narrative, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have the end result here, but it's not right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't check out.
This is what bothers me about it, and it's probably a strange thing to focus on for the hypocrisy, but he's sitting here demanding that a bunch of, and let's just be honest, whiter than dead fish belly people.
Yeah. We're talking Malacca, Minnesota.
Yeah, we're talking about people who are just, somebody had said earlier that he goes to, red counties, red regions, red districts for the financial support, and people from his own, where he lives, wouldn't go there because they wouldn't feel comfortable around those people. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. So in other words, people from inner city Minneapolis are not going to just go show up by and large in a place like Malacca or Candihoai County or Ottertail County or, in Bemidji or anything like that, because there are some very distinct cultural differences, not just ethnicity. Right. There's just very distinct cultural differences. And so to demand that these people drive hours to go take part in a protest that they don't agree with.
A riot. It looks like a third world country down there.
Even just the protest aspect of it is just that alone. Just the parts that were actually peaceful. Why would I go and join a protest when I don't even know that I believe that there was malfeasance? Why would I take part in that?
What are we going there for?
Well, yeah, exactly. But what bothers me?
He had 80,000 people there, according to him. So why did he need us?
I swear I'm going to get to my point. I swear it. What bothers me is his insistence that he's this massive leader and pushing back against the narrative, to pushing back against the control regime, the tyranny. But we have repeatedly found where he doesn't have. I want people to look at this. I don't know if anybody can see it. He's wearing a mask. He's wearing a mask in 2020. If he's this conservative, anti-tyranny, everybody telling him what to do, and not just following orders just because he's told, and that's what we're hearing. He's MAGA, right? And that's what MAGA people in Minnesota in particular are known for, not following those orders in 2020. Why does he not hide from wearing a mask? Look at the vest that he has on, says enemy. Enemy of what?
And what you're not seeing in that clip, but we'll post the picture later. And I called him out about this picture, actually. That was during a protest. It was the Black 4th of July protest. He says and I called him out on this again. He says that picture was taken in a protest to the Federal Reserve. It's weird how he just always throws it back to the Federal Reserve, and conservatives are like, oh, I hate the Federal Reserve. Well, like, that's not even true. He was marching through the streets of Minneapolis during a Black 4th of July event with chains on his ankles.
And
with BLM, like, there's nothing about with enemies, and he's got the 10K Foundation right on his shirt. It says 10K Foundation.
He was not marching with BLM. They were marching with.
They were marching with him. That's right.
I want to address something about the mask thing, because I've heard him address wearing a mask. And he said, "Look, I was doing what I needed to do at the time, and I didn't understand." And all, he's said this on his own shows. That what's the problem? What's the big deal about being ordered to wear a mask? Just wear the mask. I'm paraphrasing what he said.
Yeah.
But I also want to harp on something else, because he does this all the time. I'm marching on the Federal Reserve. Okay. First of all, brother, you don't know anything about the Federal Reserve.
What is he doing?
Nothing, you know nothing about the historicity and the story behind the Federal Reserve. You don't know why it's bad. You just keep parroting these things. And you and I've talked about this. You're parroting these talking points because you've been fed them, because you have been built up to be the next conservative icon in the state of Minnesota. And so people have kind of latched onto you because you are going to go out and say the things that they tell you to say, but you have no inkling. You have no philosophical understanding of this stuff. And you hear him because he repeats a couple of things. I'm not into identity politics. He does that constantly. But immediately after his interview with Tom Hauser, he does his interview with Tom Hauser, and then he goes on his show after being on with Tom Hauser and accuses Tom Hauser of being a racist. He says, he called me unique.
Identity politics all the time, constantly.
He plays identity politics constantly. And anybody who disagrees with him is a racist. Mm-hmm. They're all racist leftists, all racist liberals,
communist, Marxist, whatever the catchy buzzword is that's going to make conservatives shut down and not listen to this person anymore.
So you have him, that's one of them. He always harps on how he's not into identity politics. Two, he always talks about doing stuff for against the Federal Reserve. Doesn't know anything. Never dives into actual in-depth history of it at all, ever. Doesn't ever talk about it from a deeply politically philosophical
I don't even know how many protests he's actually had at the Federal Reserve, because I've noticed that is his go-to scapegoat. So, when I'm like, oh, look, here you are marching with BLM. They're marching with you. You've got change. You go, that was, a march to the Federal Reserve. No, it wasn't, dude. That was a Black 4th of July. But people just assume, like, anytime he doesn't want to say what the protest was, he said it with Sean Holster too. Like, I don't know, maybe he was going to have a protest at the Federal Reserve.
But well, they did. They did march to the Federal Reserve, but the issue is like, fine, why? But do the people know why? Are you educating them on it? And then the other thing that he brings up all the time is you don't understand your own citizenship. So he
said that to me in the video. Well, he said, because I wasn't down in Minneapolis, that I don't care about citizenship, or so. I mean, he like conflated this whole weird thing because I wasn't down rioting.
And here is what you get with those three things: the identity politics, Federal Reserve, and citizenship. There's never any depth or substance to them at all. Period. It's never explained. And he did it at Farm Fest too. He brought up those things at Farm Fest.
Yeah.
He's got
no plan. No solid point. He literally just talks. That's what he told us he was going to do in Congress. You know what I'm going to do when I get to Congress? I'm a filibuster, and I'm going to be standing there for days on end. I'm going to have a jar, and I'm going to be peeing in it on the floor of Congress, because I'm just going to keep. I'm like, and people are just clapping. Oh my gosh, it's brilliant. What?
I would love for him to show up to Senate and pee in a jar. That would be. I'm like that.
I would love it if he did that.
Go do that now.
As a Democrat. But Republicans are going to get nailed for having. They're going to. Yeah. It's embarrassing. It's
Go do it
embarrassing that
now.
this guy is says he's a Republican. He even said in Malacca, "I'm a Republican now. I'm on the Republican ballot." He said, "I'm on the Republican ballot." It's like he had to remind himself. There's lots of little things that slip out if you really listen to him and stop just like getting, people get so hung up on, oh my gosh, he said Federal Reserve. I hate the Federal Reserve too. Oh my gosh, he said this. He said, I hate those people too. Listen to the words in between the buzzwords.
And
Because
quite
that's where
frankly,
you find out who Royce White is.
and quite frankly, he can say those things because the average person who considers themselves a conservative, especially in Minnesota, has no idea why they hate the Federal Reserve.
I couldn't
they
explain
don't
it to you.
know.
I just don't want to pour anymore. So I'm like, yeah, that's great. We hate the Federal, yay. But and okay, so we want to protest the Federal Reserve. I'm not sending someone to Congress to go throw protests outside the Federal Reserve. I'm sending them to Congress to go change some things. I don't want them to stand there and talk all day. I don't want them to be, leading 80,000 people through the street. That's what grassroots activists do.
Could we not find one Thomas Massey in Minnesota? Just one? That would be. Could we just one? That's like there's got to be one. I could think of one, but but those people aren't going to get put into office.
Well, and I've said this before. Like, we are just so desperate for a fighter. And you know what? I can think of probably 10 people just off the top of my head that would make great candidates for office, that would represent Republicans well, that are well-spoken, that are smart, that don't have a bad history. And the GOP won't give them the time of day. They won't endorse them. They won't, they won't even buy them a pack of flyers.
And it's funny that
we're going like, we're just throwing it all in for Royce White. What?
And it's funny that you bring that up because I had mentioned this to someone else. Everybody acted like Royce White showed up to the convention and got endorsed like almost out of the blue. That's really how people acted. Like even the media reports afterwards were like, outsider candidate gets endorsement, and I'm paraphrasing the totality of all the news stations and newspapers and radio stations. Oh, outsider candidate Royce White shows up to convention and gets overwhelming endorsement from Republicans to be the next Senate candidate. And yes, he did get an overwhelming endorsement. No argument there. He certainly did.
Not from CD5. Weird.
Well, yeah, there's that. But if this guy, and this is what I try to get people to understand, if this guy is the outsider that everybody claims he is, and he was so well vetted, how did he even get on the ballot in the first place?
How did he get an endorsement?
How did he get on the ballot because we keep hearing that to this day, the Republican Central Committee has such a lock on things that Otter Tail County's contingency weren't even seated at this convention. I let people, and that's wrong. I absolutely, speaking as an outsider, what was done to the Otter Tail County slate of voters at the convention was wrong. But if they won't let you in and Royce White is an outsider, how did he even get on the ballot with Joe Frazier? That's what I want to know. How did he even get on the ballot? Period. Has that? I mean, maybe you haven't thought about that, but I've asked this.
I think about it all the time. I really am like, how did we get here? Because everything contradicts itself. Everything with Royce White is a contradiction. Literally everything. From his campaign manager to his history to his rhetoric to the MNGOP. And these people are saying, well, and it's funny because he keeps touting that he's endorsed. And if he was such an outsider, why is that like his main? He's Team Trump and he's the only endorsed candidate. He says it all the time. It's just all stinks. Honestly, it all stinks. Some of it I can't really piece together yet.
And you're not giving up on piecing it together, even though the
Oh
elections.
no, it's
The
actually
primaries on Tuesday.
fascinating. I mean, he's such a dumpster fire. It's actually interesting. But what was I going to say? I think I forgot my point. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's not good, folks. It's not good.
So
He's not. We can't.
We haven't touched on some. See, and that's what I want people. I want everybody. We've made a couple of references to some stuff, but we haven't really touched on any of the stuff that always gets batted down by these folks. Like you haven't. You have to go and do the research on these things. There are still a massive amount of questions about the election finance concerns.
He hasn't even filed this campaign yet.
We still
so nobody
don't know.
knows where if you donated money to Royce White, nobody knows
wait a
where
minute.
that money's
Are
gone.
you serious? He still hasn't filed?
I could be wrong. Last I checked, probably 2 weeks ago, there was no
That's
Royce
still
White percent.
ridiculous that 2 weeks ago he still hadn't.
No, I know he's been. Yeah, I mean, like that should have been done a long time ago. And you notice his signs say paid for by. I mean, he's stamping.
So he's got an election committee.
He's stamping campaign material.
So as of 2 weeks, we don't know in the interim.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I hope I'm wrong because like, if he's really gone this long, like, what is he doing, and why is nobody calling it out? Why are we the only people talking about this? It's so wild.
As of 2 weeks ago, he still hadn't named a treasurer.
There was no filings. The only filings for Royce White, well, because there was Royce White, there was his 2022 run, which those can't.
That was for House though, not for Senate.
Right, and then you look up Royce White for Senate, and there's nothing. So I don't know. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong.
Help us understand that, because I believe they have to be separate filings.
You would think so. But you can even type in Royce White and nothing comes up. So unless it's under some weird name.
And that's the same thing with his run for Congress. When asked who his campaign treasurer was, he couldn't give a name.
Well, that's interesting.
He didn't know who his. I mean, that was one of the things that really got him going with Pacman, was that Pacman asked that question and he's like, "Well, it was somebody did it." And like, if I remember correctly, you're not allowed to have multiple people in the treasurer position. There's only can be one treasurer.
Right. And you have to register as a campaign.
You have to register as a campaign that way. And so here we are finally touching on some of this stuff. And what we're seeing is like, we know who his campaign manager is by default. We know who that is.
Well, he said it in his 3-hour-long podcast with him. He introduces him as the great Jonathan Mason, lifelong friend, buddy, MAGA Republican, campaign manager. And Royce didn't deny that when I brought that up. He just told us what a hero Jonathan is. But also, I want to also note, I did some digging on the 10K Foundation, which they claimed at the time was a newly formed nonprofit. They had their mission statement page now. And look, and it says nonprofit. Go back
to your saying on their mission statement, because we lost you for a second. You must have got a call.
In their mission statement, it even says that they're a nonprofit. So they heavily advertised at the time as a nonprofit. They were neither a Minnesota nonprofit nor a 501c3. But
that's how they build themselves.
That's how they collected donations. You can still go to their website on the Wayback Machine, and it's still accepting donations. Their website has been taken down. But
wait a minute. On the Wayback Machine, if you go in there and go to their website, it will take a donation from them.
I got as far as like the screen to pay the donation. I mean, I'm not going to give them any money.
Are you kidding me?
No, I mean, and this is a website that's been taken down. So, that might be some technical thing with.
Well, that was memory. Yeah.
They did take it down, but it was there.
It was intentionally memory hold.
Yeah. And how much money did they make off of this without paying taxes? And then, then you look at 2022 and he spent $137,000 on completely unrelated expenses to his campaign. And
Well, okay, so since we brought it up, and I know you've got life to get to because you're in the middle of relocating to a degree. So the big one is, and I'm going to throw this out there. I don't care, Royce, if you went and looked at naked chicks in a strip club. I really don't care. Like, about one out of every 750,000 guys that you're going to run into has never been to a strip club.
Right.
Even the gay men that I know have been to a strip club full of women.
Right.
It's what it is.
Whatever.
I really don't care if you flew down to Florida and wanted to go to a strip club. What I don't like is this idea that you were entertaining your campaign donors at a strip club and had the audacity to tell us it was for a meeting and you were doing it because the caliber of the food was so much better than anywhere else.
He enjoys food from gentlemen's clubs across the country. I mean, TC, I laughed hysterically when I saw that interview. I think it was with Tom Hauser, and he's like, it was a campaign event, and I love food at strip club. I go to gentlemen's club. I'm like, this is like your last ditch excuse with your girlfriend or something, and you'd totally be in the doghouse for it too, because nobody actually believes that.
Not one woman I've ever been involved with would ever look at me and go, "Oh, that's okay."
Okay. I mean, it's almost like the punch
food. As long as it's
punchline, like that's like a punchline. Like, oh, you didn't give the campaign donations to strippers. They just have good food. And who takes their campaign to strip club for food? Like, none of it is right.
Well, and this is what bothers me about it. This is what bothers me about it, is that the same people, and there again, everybody knows where I stand on the he/him thing. And what has brought about the he/him thing. But the same people who are picking on Joe Frazier for working for Wells Fargo and putting he/him pronouns in his email tagline and attacking him for caving into the radical left agenda because it's immoral and it's perverse and it's sexually inappropriate and it's not the way God intended. I mean, I've heard, these are the arguments I've heard, are also defending Royce White, saying it's just a strip club. What's the big deal? Wait a minute. If Joe Frazier is an immoral person for putting he/him in there and catering to the left on that agenda, why is your candidate not immoral for going and taking his campaign donors to a strip club? Like, I don't care what they were doing there.
Not to mention everything in 2020. Not to mention he hates police. Not to mention, all of it. All of it. They are excusing all of it, and none of it is excusable to me. And I mean, maybe I'm just like a really staunch conservative or something, and this is the new big tent that Royce thinks we should have. Also he pushes that narrative. We're a big tent party. We got to let people in. Well, dude, like you're not representative of conservatives. And I even had a woman at Malacca tell me, after she told me I took up too much time, she said she doesn't care what he did in 2020. Well, really? Then don't say you support our police. Then don't be all back the blue and, don't sit there and get mad at Kamala Harris for tweeting the tweet about Minnesota Freedom Fund. And don't get mad at Walz for letting the city burn, because he's the third leg of that. He brought those people in there. And he's proud of it.
He helped bring some of them. He may not have brought them all, but he helped bring some of them, because there's no way that I believe.
When Royce White corrects me, I said 10,000, and he's like, no, it was 80,000. Okay, buddy. Guess it was 80,000. I didn't do a head count, but that's a lot of people.
There's no way I believe that all 80,000 of those people did not take part in any of the rioting.
Well, no, and he says that it was all peaceful, but then when he turned around and asked me if I've ever hosted a protest, and I explained that yes, I have, and I said I did the one on January 6th at the St. Paul Capitol, and you know what? I said, you know what, Royce? It was safe. And he yelled back at me, there is no such thing as a safe protest. And everyone clapped. And I'm like, but except for yours was safe, right? The one where the city burned, that was a safe one. I mean, none of it makes sense. None of this stuff actually makes any sense. He just says it so confidently, and people really, I don't know, like I said, is it the Royce White trance, or like his brainwashing capability is actually scary, that he got that many people to agree with things that they would never agree with.
Here's what I think it is when you really start to look at it, Becky, is that you've nailed it. And I think it's a good way to err on the side of empathy for a lot of people who we would share a good percentage of philosophical perspective with. They're just desperate for something different.
Yeah. This ain't our hero. This isn't our fighter. This isn't our guy.
They're just
we want it to be, you know.
But they don't care just because they're desperate for something other than what they're
the Minnesota GOP is in an abusive relationship with Royce White, because this is not like, this is like totally, he just tells you all the things you want to hear. And you know what? I even agree with Royce White. I don't disagree with him on a lot of, I'd say probably 75% of the things he says, but I just know it's not genuine. He's hitting all the talking points. And I wish, look, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know this stuff until I saw his campaign manager. I didn't know any of this. But everybody who has done their homework,
you get sucked down these rabbit holes.
What?
It's funny how you can get sucked down rabbit holes and
I
come
know.
away.
And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Like, it's embarrassing. Like, and everybody knows that this is possible. So many people can sit there and say, oh, well, they just dress up like Trump supporters. And the media believes it, and they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you literally have to see it for yourself. And that's how I can tell these people that are just riding his coattails still. I can tell, like, you haven't done your homework. Because no person, honestly, with morals, and look, you might like Royce White, he's very charismatic. He says the right things. He's kind of funny sometimes. But once you do your homework on him, you just see through it all. Like, it's just all an act.
For me,
you can tell these people haven't done that, because you might like him, but do we really need to put him in a seat of power? Like, is that really a smart idea?
Yeah. How about you do your time? Not in a criminal sense. How about you do your time? Let's see you run for city council.
Start at the bottom, bro, like the rest of us, I mean, how many people that we know would make a great senator, and they can't even get help getting onto the city council from the GOP. And they're putting in their time, and they're fighting, they're not giving up. And why are we so quick to put Royce White in power? This guy is a lunatic. Like, he's so unstable.
Well, I'll tell you what I think it is, honestly. Besides people being desperate to have somebody they think is going to fight for them, they have bought into identity politics. A lot of these people have bought into identity politics over the last few years from the right-wing perspective. And so they believe that the only way to have an impact is they have to have somebody of the right, gender, ethnicity, whatever. And if we have just this right mix of things, just the right gender, just the right ethnicity, whatever it might be, then we could show that conservatism isn't just for white stuffed shirt people from
Big tent.
Yeah,
Big tent.
Exactly. I think one of the things that really hit me as I dug into him, and a little bit of how I think, is the lack of substance. And I've been telling people for a while, he's just nothing but talking points. There's never any substance to what he explains. And what hit me was the comment about they talk too much. They're uppity, mouthy. And you see that in how he responded to you. He really does believe that women are mouthy, that they're uppity, that they talk too much.
Yeah.
And that's why he talked way over you.
Yep.
And he tried to explain it away in his conversation with Packman, and he didn't help himself at all. He got asked about it again in his debate with Joe Frazier and didn't handle it well. And the other area where the lack of philosophical substance really started to play out was when he got asked about his child support situation. And he said, "Look, we've already explained this. I didn't know that when I lost my MBA income, I didn't know I needed to file to have it amended." And then instead of which I think is like, I don't know how you didn't know that, bro. Like you would think when you take that big of a pay cut, the first thing that's going to be on your mind is like, I need to go figure out how in the hell I'm supposed to pay this. And the child support courts are going to look at that and go, yeah, you don't have to keep paying that much when your income's changed this much.
Well, it's the same thing with the harassment restraining order. That went through because he didn't show up. Because he was out of state.
Yep.
So that's somehow an excuse. That means it just didn't, I mean, it's not valid. I mean, that's the only reason it doesn't. Well, you actually have to be responsible for your life, right?
Like, Lisa Hansen got thrown in jail because she didn't get notification about a court date and she didn't show up for it. And like, everybody that hates Lisa, and you know Lisa, everybody that hates Lisa came unglued saying she deserves to go to jail for not showing up for court. But boy, Royce White. But here's what really bothered me.
Every excuse in the world they give him. Every excuse.
This is what really bothered me about his response in the debate. And I know that you know people in this situation. You name one woman in the state of Minnesota who's ever been thrown in jail or lost her job for not paying her child support. I'm going, you are not paying any attention, bro, because I can name, well, I can't name them, but I could give you dozens and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of cases across the state of Minnesota of women who have been imprisoned for not paying child support. Literally, it happens all the time.
I'm sure it happens all the time. It's a bold statement. But that's a typical Royce move is, don't look at me, look at these people. Total block and redirect.
Not only is it a block and redirect, it's an exact, perfect example of identity politics at hand. Yeah. I don't play identity politics while I go over here, and it's the gaslighting. I don't play identity politics while I sit here and play identity politics, and everybody applauds. Yeah. And what's so funny about it, too, is it exposes the hypocrisy and the willingness, the cognitive dissonance, and I refer to the cognitive disconnect, too.
That's what it is.
The same crowd of people who are literally conservatives are out there they love seeing guys get arrested for not paying their child support. They do. People laugh at me when I say that, but the people who drive that move, the people who are 100% behind, if you're not paying your child support, you should be going to jail. I'm like,
well, if a Democrat was spending campaign funds at a strip club, do you think Republicans would excuse it?
No. And that's what floors me is like,
we look ridiculous.
Are fully on board with throwing people in jail for not paying their child support. But when Royce White says it's not good because women don't get thrown in jail for not paying their child support, Republicans are like, hey, yeah, that's not fair. That's I don't get it.
I keep saying they clap like trained seals because I don't even think these people know what they're clapping for. It's just when Royce White says clap, you clap, or else you might be racist or an idiot or a moron or a leftist or something. But it's wild. The power, like you said, the cognitive dissonance, that they are just okay with all these things, and I'm not okay with being a hypocrite, and that's why it bothers me so much, and that's why this whole thing bothers me, because this is not representative of Republicans. And I mean, I know we all have varying levels of conservative beliefs, but this is really like out there. Like this, it's really not even close. It's not even like, and you know, one thing too, he spent that almost the entire time in Malacca talking badly about Republicans. Hey, look, I don't love every Republican out there. There's lots of establishment ones. But when you're talking badly about Alpha News and Kendall Qualls and Minnesota Freedom Club, like, those are pretty standard across the board. Things that conservatives generally agree upon. And he got everyone in that room to just clap at all the bad things about them. You know, where was Kendall Qualls during the riots? And people are like, oh, I don't know. What? Kendall Qualls was acting like a grown adult and not going and rioting in Minneapolis, I'm sure. Maybe he was taking care of his kids, like most people, or just home at night, not getting in trouble. But they're all just like, yeah, that's right. Why wasn't Kendall Qualls down in the riots?
I want to
Yeah.
know, did Royce show up for the young man that was shot and killed while he was out campaigning for Mr. Lacey?
You know, I don't quote me on that, but probably
You know who I'm talking about.
Yep, I do.
I
Yeah.
mean, that was one of the most tragic things I've
Brian would know
experienced.
that. Brian would know that for sure.
You know, I guess.
And hold on, let me say one more thing.
Go ahead.
If Royce White gets on the ballot, we're just gonna have to do this more because, like, we cannot elect him. We cannot put him in Senate. And if I have to go and show all the receipts and hand out flyers and go to his town halls and do this everywhere, I will, because it's really important to me that Republicans don't fall into this trap. And whether it's a trap in the future that we don't know about, you know, the fight, whatever rhetoric, or else it's just a trap of cheering for stuff that you don't actually believe in, or the trap of having this person represent us who doesn't actually represent us. Like, it bothers me. It bothers me that he's out doing this. It bothers me that he thinks we're so stupid we can't figure it out. And it bothers me that conservatives are shutting down other conservatives for doing their homework, for doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
The thing that has, I'm going to get emotional and like mad and sad at the same time. Like I talked about you and I, the last time we talked, it wasn't great. We did our show together and then we had another situation, and I'm sorry for how I handled all of that. But what pissed me off was I know your character, and I know the caliber of doggedness that you have for conservative issues in Minnesota.
Right.
And to watch people who have never been in the fight. I have stood, literally, people don't understand this. I have stood shoulder to shoulder with you. Literally shoulder to shoulder with you in one of the most risky moments of 2020 at the governor's mansion, while Minnesota State Patrol and the St. Paul Police Department turned their backs on people like us and marched rioters, violent thugs, into the midst of what was genuinely a peaceful protest, stood shoulder to shoulder with you and others in that moment. And to have people in the Rocks and Cows group on Facebook turn on you and call you names who have never been at any of those peaceful protests. People who they weren't there. They weren't there. They didn't stand up in 2020 and into 2021. They didn't do a damn thing. They've lost nothing. They've sacrificed nothing. And then to turn on you, turn on me. I'm used to it. Like, I get it. I bring a lot of it on myself because I say things. But to turn on you and attack you, of all people, for being a sellout, for being a leftist, calling you names and coming after you personally. I'm like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Who do you think, like we can have an in-house disagreement on some stuff, but who do you, of all people, think you are telling Becky that she's the problem?
Well, like, I'm just this random, like, leftist that popped up out of nowhere and wanted to trash Royce White. That's what bothers me. It's like, I did everything right, and I've done everything right. And, you know, yeah, it bothers me. It bothers me that, yeah, and I even said, you know, like I said, I don't want to be like, I don't want people to believe me because I'm Becky Strohmeyer. I want them to believe me because I'm right. And because these are the facts. The facts are the facts. You know, people can look for themselves. That's the thing. It's like,
And we will be providing receipts as we can put them together in a coherent way. Because the way the technology issue came in then, and I could not get it to lay out where we could put it together in a very coherent way, and
there's
that's why
so
I
much
didn't want.
too. There's
There's
so much.
it's like yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why it came out the way it did. It was why it was having a tech issue.
I know, you're like, send me a couple photos. I'm like, here's 86 of them.
And here's how I'm going to juxtapose it. The same things that have been said about me have been said about you in that same group and by others outside of the group. And I have done the same amount of legwork as you have, but in a different direction. And I have listened to hours, and I said this already, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of Royce White on his own show, and then on with Professor Penn, and I'm still trying to figure out who this guy is. But it doesn't mean he's a nobody just because I haven't heard of him. But
the way he refers to him as like I'm trying to piece that together too. Like he's some sort of voice of authority. I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea.
And he throws out names like Steve Bannon, my good friend, and all of this. Okay, fine, all of that. I don't care.
Well, people come back at me and say, "Well, he's endorsed by Steve Bannon and Alex Jones," and I'm like, "Look, the COVID vaccine was endorsed by a lot of great people too. Doesn't mean it was a good idea. You had to do your own homework on it, didn't you?"
But the more you listen to him, and I'm going to use some language here that I don't have a problem using in some situations, but I'm going to use language to describe not him, but what he says about his own supporters. So I want people to understand this. He refers to white, evangelical, Protestant Christians who take issue with him going to strip clubs, who take issue with him and how he talks. And he says, you're nothing but a bunch of fucking white cucks.
That's a favorite word of his.
If you don't like the way I talk, fuck you, is what he says. Now, have I said that? Sure. I don't hide from it. But that's how he talks about you Christians who don't like that kind of language. But
then we'll turn around and talk about how he's a God-fearing Christian.
Exactly.
Like, really? You can't even manage to have like a cordial debate with somebody. And we want to put this guy representing us in Congress as a senator?
You really want him on the floor of the Senate calling anybody who disagrees with him a fucking white cuck?
Yeah. He's called Joe Frazier that countless times. And that's the thing. People just need to go to his X page. It's highway_30. And
you haven't memorized
it's all right there. I mean, anybody who disagrees with him. And if it was just social media, it would be a little different. But no, he does that in person too. And he doubles down. And there's people that are like, oh, well, I went to the fair and I asked him about it and he gave me a really good answer. But did you question his answer? Or did you just say, oh, okay, Royce, you didn't march with BLM. I marched with, yeah, okay. Or did you say, that's contrary to what I've seen? Because that's when he gets nasty. You can go ask him these questions all day long. As long as you agree with him, you're good.
Take it as long as you take his answer at face value and you don't ask any follow-ups or you don't do any digging or you.
Yep.
And here's where I commend you. You said that you're not very polished when we started this. You kept it together in a way that 98% of people couldn't have in that moment. And I'm pretty well versed in human psychology just because of the training that I've had in my life, especially in my career in law enforcement. As a deputy inside of a detention center, you have got to learn how to talk to people when they're yelling at you.
Yeah.
And outside of a handful of other people in my life that I know personally, I don't think anybody would have been able to handle it the way you did. You stayed on task, you stayed civil, you stayed polite, and you stayed sharp without losing your mind. And he was coming unglued.
Yeah.
I dare anyone who has a modicum of integrity and philosophical purity and even ethics and empathy to watch the video that we're going to be posting on the YouTube channel and on Facebook. I dare you to watch how that played out and come and tell me personally or to my face or in a comment that the person who lost control in that moment was Becky. I dare you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been told that he laid the smack down. He threw down, put me in my place, and I can do this because, like you said, I've stood toe to toe with Antifa, and they say such garbage. I'm a little sister. I have words like that. It doesn't matter. But like when you listen to that video, also remember, add another 10 minutes to that. Because that's not
on.
even.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just kept trying to circle him back to the point, and I think that is his tactics weren't working on me, and that's why he was getting so upset, and that's why they wanted me out too, because I was proving my point.
You were exposing him.
Yeah, and I didn't have to be mean. I didn't have to call him names. All I had to do was let Royce be Royce. And he did it himself.
And I know that some of your followers are watching. This vast army of followers that you have. I know for a fact that some of them can be very salty at times. Am I wrong? They can be salty at times.
No. I feel like everyone's been salty with me at some point, and I'm just like, okay, well.
But their concern with Royce White is not whether or not he's salty. Their concern with Royce White are the same concerns that you have, that I have. There's something wrong with him. All of this is wrong.
Yeah.
From his affiliations to his name dropping to apparent.
Like it couldn't be. It's like literally in Hollywood lights right in front of us.
Yeah.
It's amazing that people are they're choosing to ignore it. And it really bothers me when like my friends, which actually I've had overwhelmingly positive responses. There's only been a handful of people that continue to attack me for it. Which again, why are you attacking me?
Yeah.
Like,
move on.
I'm not making up stories about Royce. I'm not just coming out of the woodworks to talk smack about him. Like, I'm showing you facts, and Royce is showing you who he is. And nowhere in that time have I acted even close to the way he's acted. And somehow, I'm attacking him. I'm just one of those leftists. It's, he must be right over the target. None of it makes sense. None of it comes together. None of it makes sense. I don't even care if you know who I am or don't know who I am, or maybe you don't like me. I don't care. I'm right. These are facts. Everybody has come to the same conclusion. Everybody who has looked has come to the same conclusion. And most of us have had very similar conversations with him.
If he'll talk to people. Yeah. If he'll talk to people, that once he figures out you're not on his side, you may not even get a chance to talk to him, which is what he tried to do with you.
Right. So. He wanted to rush me off. He wanted to spit his narrative at me, and I wouldn't let him. And I kept calling him on it.
Yep.
And he squirmed. Like, I wish I could do a debate with him. I wish I could do it. He'd be drinking his water.
Whatever is in his cup.
Whatever.
Oh, Becky, I know you got to get back to life. So we will work on getting those files. I say files, but we'll work on getting this all laid out so that it's presented in a cogent way. And like I said, I have your permission to use the video clips and put them up so that people off of Facebook can see it.
Also, if people are free to message me on Facebook if you need a place. Maybe you want to do your homework, you don't know where to start. Royce White and the 10K Foundation is a great place. But hey, if people want to message me and they have questions, they want to know where to look, I think everybody needs to look for themselves, because it's truly even more appalling when you see it yourself.
That's
So
the one thing I keep. That's the one thing I keep telling people is we keep hearing that, the Democrats will vote for whoever the Democrat leadership puts in front of them. Vote blue no matter who. We hear that
the
over and over
delegates
again.
did it this time.
And here we are being told by other Republicans, you just need to vote for Royce because we tell you he's okay. That's exactly what we're being told. The exact same line that they use, that they accuse the Democrats of using, is exactly what they're using on
What's
everyone
funny
else.
is they're saying, well, he's the only endorsed candidate. Well, when did we start caring about endorsed candidates? Wasn't the GOP like the establishment? Well, now the establishment is what is supposed to make me vote. Look, I don't care if the candidate sucks. I'm not going to vote for him. I don't care if every single 100% of the delegates voted for him. They either didn't do their homework or they're corrupt. There's just no other options. And I'm not behind them. I don't care. Like I said about the COVID vaccine, lots of people recommended that. Lots of people endorsed it. Did I do my homework? Yes. Did I decide I didn't like it? Yes. And who was right?
Yeah.
This isn't very Republican-y of people. This is not conservative. This is not it. Just guy in it.
Or it is. Or this is exactly where we are now, and we might have to start looking at other options. And I know it's hard for a lot of people because they don't see them, but I'll tell you, there is a candidate. I'll tell you right now, if you are a Republican who doesn't know what to do, and Royce White walks away with this primary win, I know I'm not going to be able to get you to vote the way I want you to vote if you're a Royce backer, no matter what. But I'm telling you right now, if you are not a Royce backer and Royce wins, Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate, Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate, I'm telling you right now, vote for her no matter what. She is the best person on the ticket right now, or on the ballot right now. The best. I can personally attest to that.
I'm glad you have a suggestion, because people have been asking me, and I'm like, look, I don't know who I'm going to vote for, but it won't be Royce. I can tell you that.
Do the I know you're busy, but I'm telling you, you do I have no fear of being contradicted on this. You research Rebecca Whiting, research her. I guarantee you there will be places you disagree with her, but you will walk away going, I can support this woman because I know she's going to do the right thing. And I mean that. Like the one positive out of all of this for me is it's going to make it a lot easier for me to tell people, no matter who you would normally vote for, Rebecca Whiting is the person I will tell you will not disappoint you.
Good, I'll look in her.
And that invites for anyone, look her up. And I will let you go, and I will close out. I cannot thank you enough for your time. If we come to Wednesday and we find out that he comes out on top, I guarantee you we will have you back on.
Then we're gonna have to really drill in here. This is
you're gonna have to get,
this is the appetizer.
You're gonna have to get some better recording equipment, or somebody with a better phone.
If I have to go confront him all over, I will. And he's probably just not going to let me in his events anymore. But then other people have to do it too.
But the nice thing about that is
people are coming, right?
The people are coming. And if you show up to an event and they won't let you in, then we'll talk about that.
That's a great story too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
Thank you for being willing to do this again. And I look forward to working with you more in the future. On other stuff, and as I know you're really super busy, but just so that we can be forthright with people, if you can send me what you've already sent me, but send it to me in order, even if you have to send it in my email, because you now have my email. If you could send it to me in a way that you think would lay out better,
I'll just do a Google Drive.
Yeah. And then we'll go from there. So
perfect.
Thank you for that. And we'll get that up for people to see ASAP. And thank you for letting me use your video. So
yeah, of course. Share it far and wide.
Absolutely. Go do your stuff. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. Thanks everyone for watching.
Go get out of here, kid.
All right.
Bye. I meant what I said, folks. Like, no matter what the outcome come Tuesday is, I believe if you're a Republican, you are not left with many options as far as actually voting for somebody who's going to actually represent you and your values. And I will tell you right now that Royce White does not represent your values. And I don't know that Joe Frazier can either. There is one person running for Senate in the state of Minnesota right now, and this is me. I'm not speaking for Becky or anybody else. I'm speaking for me. There is one person running for Senate in the state of Minnesota that actually represents the values of Minnesota. Actual values of Minnesota, and that is Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate. She is a phenomenal candidate. She's a mother of 12. She is a decorated combat veteran. She was a medic who did 2 tours in Iraq, who lost people in the illegal banker war that was a global war on terror that stretched on for 20 plus years. She believes in getting the state out of your day-to-day living and letting you live in a way that suits you as best as possible, as long as you're not harming others. And she will tell you that to your face. And that's what I'm thankful for. And out of all of this is the fact that I can now tell people, you do not have to be stuck holding your nose and voting for the lesser of two evils. You can actually vote for a person who is not part of the evil that you have been forced to vote for, basically, for the last umpteen years or your whole life. I believe that Royce White has come into this race to shed light on the fact that there are other options, and that other option is the best option, and that is Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate. I cannot compel you enough. I cannot convince you. There's nothing I could say I know that convince you to vote for her that I can say, but she can convince you. If your answer is there's no one that can beat Amy Klobuchar, then why bother voting for someone you know isn't going to beat her because you don't feel like you have another choice? At least vote your conscience and vote for Rebecca. Because she is the best candidate on the ballot this year. Thank you for sitting through all of this, and be looking for the data, the receipts that Becky and I were talking about. We will be putting them out over the course of the weekend and the next few days. So until next time, everybody, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. We will be continuing this conversation, especially if Royce does make it through the primary. My goal will be to see Rebecca get elected and to make sure that Royce never has a career in politics again. He is an embarrassment to anybody with any type of intellect. Rebecca, on the other hand, is the intellectual for voters. She will represent you. And she will not treat you like dirt if you dare to ask her a hard question. So until next time, my friends, as my friend Monica's handmade sign, she put that together for me a little over a year ago. Fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-30. Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Secondary guidance systems engaged. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark. All systems are a go. All systems are a go. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at